Welcome to TMG Today. Join other master manifestors across the globe to turn your goals into reality at lightning speed. Here, we connect the dots for you so you can skip all the nonsense and finally get unstuck. Right here on the Manifestor's Guide today. Let's go.
Welcome to TMG Today, the Manifestor's Guide podcast. I am Dewey Taylor and...
I am Charlie Carroll.
He sure is, and we are on a mission to create master manifestors across the globe. Here we explore the intersection of universal law, success principles, and brain science. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this with everybody in your life and people that you don't know, because we want to create a cyclical energy flow of prosperity and joy and everything that is good in the world. This is an extension of our community, the Manifestor's Guide Inner Circle. So if you are interested in taking more of a deep dive into these topics as you keep listening to the podcast, feel free to visit us at manifestorsguide.com. And there's tons of information there, and you can check out our Manifestor's Guide DE system. A lot of these principles and things are pulled from there. Plenty of stuff there. Go check it out, and we'll see you there. So we have, as a part of our community there, the Manifestor's Guide Inner Circle, we have community members ask questions. And we got a question this week from Chris J. What does Chris J say?
Yeah, so our friend Chris from San Francisco is asking, he says, can you talk a little bit more about how law of attraction works within the framework of the system? There's so much more to this than I thought, and it's a little overwhelming. I'm having a hard time figuring out what to attract and how to do it when it seems like it's not working.
Okay. That's a great question. I actually hear that one quite a bit. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah,
First of all, you used to live in San Francisco, right? So do you know Chris?
I did. I don't think I know. I do not know Chris, but I'm sure San Francisco is not
your
very
best friends.
large. I'm sure we probably right. We probably lived close to each other. San Francisco is so small when you think in the big grand scheme of things.
Well, Chris, great question, and so happy for you that you're in such a great spot and that you love it there. Actually, we hear this quite a bit when these new principles come into focus for people for the first time. It can seem overwhelming, but that's why we try to I guess I would say adjust people's expectations of what this is. This isn't a snap your fingers, learn the one secret, and that it just unlocks everything in your life in one split second. This really is a lifestyle shift, right?
Yeah.
So the more that you start incorporating and practicing these things in your life, that's where the ease comes from here. It comes from having all the tools that you're ever going to need to work with for the rest of your life to make everything work, and just practicing them on a regular basis and going on an adventure to continually explore these things from different perspectives so you understand it more and more. And as you expand into further spaces, you ask different questions and understand it even more. And then you ask more questions as you expand and understand it even more. This is a continuing adventure. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that today as we talk about becoming magnetic, because that's what you have to do in order to attract. So, Charlie, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I was going to say it's always the most confusing at the start too, because you're shifting into this new way of looking at the world around you and how you relate to it. And, especially when we talk strictly about manifestation, and you and I have talked about before on this, books like The Secret, they provide a lot of great information, but don't necessarily set people up with the right expectation or the right framework for how to really step into this and make this a lifestyle change. Only because, especially when you're just starting, you haven't seen a manifestation, so to speak. You haven't seen really truly connect the dots between how you vibrate and how you think and feel to what you create. But once you do, you get one example of it, then you get 2, then you get 5, and then 50. It starts to snowball, and you start observing how you created one thing. And we have another universal law that we'll talk about in the future. It's the perpetual law of transmutation. And you begin to then move your energy, that same energy of ease, that same energy of, cooperation, and unfolding, you move that into the other areas that you're still trying to create growth and expansion. And just like you said, you alluded to it, the universe is always expanding. So even when you expand, you're still going to have the experience of wanting to expand more and more and more. It doesn't end.
Yes.
And that's just the nature.
Well, and
the
it's
deal.
also noting that the process of manifestation uses all universal laws. It's not just one. People think that law of attraction is universal law, that is manifestation, and that is one component of universal law. People ignore the other 11 universal laws. And, if you're only focusing on gravity, I use this example a lot, but if you only focus on gravity and, you're at the top of the Hoover Dam and there's a target at the bottom and you have a bowling ball, and you should technically, if you only understand gravity, be able to look right over the target and go, oh, I can just put the ball right in front of the target and drop it and it'll fall straight down and hit that target. But if you're not taking into account any of the other universal forces around you, all of a sudden, that ball's going to start drifting the further that it goes, and it's not going to hit the target at all. And then you go, why didn't that work? Why doesn't law of attraction work for me? Well, because you're not taking into account all of the other forces, like wind resistance and velocity and all those things that you're going to need in order to hit that target. But when you understand something from a higher level, right? I mean, think about it. If they can hit a trajectory from the Earth to the moon, because they can calculate it that accurately, obviously we are capable of understanding things at a greater level to be able to predict something happening with that level of accuracy. That's what we're talking about here. Learn how to use law of attraction to attract things to you for sure, but also learn how it works with the other universal components. That's how you actually manifest. You can just use law of attraction, but you can use a lot of other things in conjunction with it, or everything can be working together. They're all cooperative components.
I love that you just used the word accuracy, because I now like to think of it, the universal laws, when you look at all of them working in tandem, you are able to apply accuracy, a lot more accuracy to creating what you desire than what you would want, than what you might just create using law of attraction. Law of attraction is definitely a thing, and it definitely works. And it is working right now in every single moment of our lives. So it's not like you're tapping into this new thing that you just had, that's been out there for you before, that you've not tapped into. You've been tapping into it your whole life, just like you've been held to the ground by gravity your whole life, or that when a strong current of wind blows by you, it might, sway you or knock you over. These things have been working our entire lives, but once we understand them all and how they interact, our accuracy with them, and how can become so much stronger so that we can hit those targets.
I love that. And that's what we're going to talk about here with becoming, obviously this is going to be a little bit more law of attraction oriented, because we're talking about becoming magnetic and using that universal law. But let's talk about that in conjunction with what we talked about last week with string theory and vibration, and using the law of attraction to actually aid in your manifestation process with the other universal laws. So we'll talk about that right after this quick break. We'll see you right back here. TMG is partnered with Podbean to bring you new episodes each week. Are you finally ready to step into your own power and let your voice be heard? Well, then why not start your very own podcast? Remember, what you find ordinary, others will find extraordinary. It's never been easier to produce and distribute your podcast to every major podcasting app available. Podbean also makes monetizing your podcast foolproof, so you can add value to the world while you're making money. Thanks to our partnership, you can try your first month absolutely free. Visit podbean.com/TMG today. That's podbean.com/TMG today.
Brain science has shown that by the time you're 7 years old, you've installed a program in your mind that you'll run for a lifetime. And for 99% of us, we're running a program of struggle. But you can change that. At TMG, we've designed a system to install this new programming to get you exactly where you want to go. With the power of brain science and multisensory learning, you'll discover your path of least resistance as you manifest your goals into reality. And for a limited time, you can try the Manifestor's Guide to Ease system absolutely risk-free. This system comes with unlimited access to weekly coaching for accelerated results, as well as instant membership into the Manifestor's Inner Circle online community. If you're you're ready to finally get unstuck and create the ultimate life success you know you're capable of. Visit manifestorsguide.com. Use coupon code TMG today for 10% off, and we'll send the Manifestor's Guide to E-System to your email right now. That's manifestorsguide.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to jump into this topic of becoming magnetic using the law of attraction. So, Charlie, how would you explain this to somebody who has never explored this before, or they just have a very topical understanding of law of attraction? How would you present this information from your current level of understanding to somebody who is newer to this, or maybe they just saw The Secret for the first time and that's all that they know, and this isn't necessarily working for them? That's kind of what Chris is talking about, you know? It's overwhelming at some point when it's not working.
It's definitely over. When you start looking at your life through the lens of any universal law of attraction on its own, or any of the others, it can be really overwhelming because you're kind of put into this new, completely different space of how you understand how things have happened to you and how things are happening to you and what will happen. It can also throttle you if you're someone who's been programmed to believe your external world worked on you, meaning life is happening to you. There are just things you can't control. And therefore you've been used to, and rightfully so, become comfortable, giving up some of your power, giving up, not taking full responsibility for your life because you truly lived in a framework where some things were just literally outside your control. When you start looking at things like law of attraction, and because we're focusing on that one today, I'll hone in on it. When you look at attraction, the law of attraction says that you draw, like attracts like. In its simplest form, you draw to you that which you are. And that can be really offensive. Some people really get triggered by that and find that offensive because they may have had some really tragic things happen, horrid things, or they're just really aware of some of the horrid things that have manifested in this world, now and throughout history. And they just it's almost it offends the senses in a way initially to think that the people that experience those things were the very cause of them. But in actuality, when we talk about becoming magnetic, and really we already are magnetic. It's really about becoming magnetic to attract
to the things that we desire,
right? And so when you get to the other side of this, though, and you kind of get past the ego a little bit, and you go, okay, well, X, Y, and Z were awful to me, or were awful things that I experienced. X, Y, or A, B, C were excellent things I've experienced. And you start seeing yourself as the cause of it all, and you begin taking responsibility for your life with an understanding that as you shift in how you vibrate, we talked about vibration recently, to where you're now magnetizing a new higher level of living, one of more joy, prosperity, success, et cetera, et cetera. Now you feel really empowered by knowing that you create everything in your life. And through law of attraction, it really can be this incredibly, it is this incredibly empowering law that says not one thing in this world has control over you, no matter how convincing that thing may think it is. Government, family, your environment, et cetera, your job, boss, et cetera. We can act within ourselves, shift within, and then watch our outside world change. It's a whole new way of living and acting upon the world. The world's not acting on you; you're acting on it.
And what I love about what you just said, it really fits in with the paradigm shift that we talk about all the time. You have to exist in a new paradigm. The old belief system, and where a lot of people sit right now in their energy space, the old programming is a system of blame. When something happens in their life, they either blame someone else, blame a circumstance or a person or an institution, something outside of themselves. They point the finger and blame that. Or if they don't have anything else to blame, instead of taking responsibility for themselves, they blame themselves. Once you start vibrating into a higher space, you realize blame is an illusion. There isn't anyone or anything to blame. Right. Things just happen, and or we just create them, right? Or circumstances that we're not creating outside of our control happen because of other people's creation. That's what's happening all the time. The universe basically doesn't look at it as good or bad or right or wrong or this or that. It's not any of that. It just is.
That's a big one, right? That's a big one.
And it just
there's
it
no,
exists on.
There's no morality. There's no morality in the universe.
And that's a great conversation. That's a great conversation that we will have at some point, because that's what people's first initial reactions are, is, well, that goes against everything that I believe or that I've ever been taught. But that's the point, is that brings up a huge topic of attribution. What do we attribute this to that because of what? So that's a whole different conversation. We'll get to attribution eventually, because it will change your entire perspective on everything you've ever heard or believed or that's ever existed, period. And it's very important because it leads you right back to what you just said, which is personal responsibility. So it might be a little triggering at first to realize that you are creating everything in your experience, because you might be living in that space of blame. Right? Well, if I can't blame other people, then that means I have to blame myself. And that's where you're coming back to you. But there is something that is so much more powerful than blame, which is responsibility. Responsibility and accountability just means that you are able and powerful enough and stable enough and strong enough and vibrating high enough to take the mantle of responsibility. And I explain this to my coaching clients all the time. When you are powerful, you can take that responsibility and put it on your shoulders without blame. And you can say, I absolutely understand the responsibility. I understand where the responsibility lies, because I understand how all this works. And I understand that I also have the power to fix it. There is no blame. That doesn't exist, right? Because it's just about identifying what's happening.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think this also ends up making a little bit more sense when we add that as a core idea with working with law of attraction is that you shift internally and then allow, and we talk about this in the system, allow the how to come into being. Meaning you might legitimately be in a really frustrating scenario right now in your life. You might really have manifested, and it starts by saying, hey, I manifested this. I manifested this job I don't like. And I manifested this awkward relationship between me and my colleagues or my boss or whatever. That's step number one, taking responsibility. I manifested this. Okay, well, now I'm going to I'm becoming magnetic towards what I desire. I'm going to magnetize a happier work environment. And I'm going to start, and we unpack all the tools and how to do this in the system. We'll touch on it a little bit today and in future episodes. But you begin to deliberately choose to feel and think as if you have the job you want, you are respected in your environment, et cetera, et cetera. You don't so much worry about how you're going to make that happen in the physical world. That's not the point. And it's easier.
Release the attachment. Exactly.
Like you can let go of worrying about blame becomes irrelevant, because it is in no way, shape, or form necessary to even decide blame to find the solution. The solution comes because you magnetize it by how you shift internally. You can skip blame over completely. And so,
and what you're saying,
when you know that you're not responsible for the how.
Sorry, go ahead.
Last thing, sorry, not to be too repetitive, but when you know that you are not responsible for the how, that's literally not how the universe is set up. As a matter of fact, when we get involved in the how, typically we tend to make it overly complicated, and instead we just get involved within ourselves with what we want out of the scenario. Then,
because you can only manifest from your current level of understanding. And that's really, I mean, think about what we talked about last week. If you're trying to take control of your life from your current level of understanding, Einstein says this, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So your focus should be shifting into a higher vibration, a higher level of consciousness, a higher frequency, a higher understanding. Then you will use all of these universal law components to manifest from a higher understanding. That's what this is really all about, is becoming the person you desire to be that exists in the reality that you wish to create. It's not just about pulling things and attracting things and using the law of attraction to pull things into your current reality. It's about meshing all of these things together to actually merge your desires into the future reality that you desire. I mean, think about what we talked about last week,
Right.
when you, with the atomic levels and all that stuff in string theory, when an atom vibrates higher, it becomes greater in mass. And the greater in mass that you become, the more magnetic you become, right? So the higher you are vibrating, the more magnetic you become, and the stronger that magnetism is, but it's toward what you are desiring from a place of purpose and from a higher level of understanding. This is why poor people, if they're in a lower vibrational state, it's very easy to want to just manifest a lottery win down into that current level. And it's also just as easy to lose all of that money, which is why there's such a high rate of bankruptcies from people who've won the lottery, because they don't know how to be wealthy. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to exist in that vibrational space with that vibrational currency. That's what we're talking about. So become somebody who knows how to be wealthy, and the wealth will appear. So we are fully in charge of that state of being. And so what you think about the most, what you become, what you vibrate into, is what you're attracting, positive or negative. So, and I'm going to give an example of this. If you're driving to work, and you're running just a little bit late, and you think about, and I don't want to be late. I don't want to be late. I don't want to be late. A lot of people use the law of attraction like that. Oh no, I'm not going to be late. I'm not going to be late today. Well, what the universe is hearing is, because what the fundamental core of what your focus is late. I'm not going to be what? Late. I'm not going to be what? Late. That's actually what you're manifesting, is the lateness. And that's why a lot of times you'll show up late. And you go, well, why did that happen? Law of attraction doesn't work. Yes, it does. You did attract that. You attracted all the traffic and all the blocks and all the things that were going to keep you from getting there on time. Because that's what your focus was placed on, was the lateness. When you shift into a higher perspective, into a different perspective, and you're more cognizant of what you're focusing on, you can change that to, you know what? I'm going to arrive in the perfect timing, and it's going to be just fine. So then you have completely released the attachment to even when you arrive, because when you arrive, it'll be just fine. And I'll give an example of that too for me personally. That exact same scenario has happened to me. I had a very important job in the past where I was a creative director, and I was making really good money, like good 6-figure money. And it was very stringent. I mean, if you were 1 minute late, there were cameras everywhere and you would get written up. It was very, very stringent. Well, there was a day where I was running late and I just surrendered and said, you know what? I'm going to get there in perfect timing and it's perfectly fine. I arrived over 2 hours late because there was traffic, there were accidents, all sorts of stuff. And it was just nobody cared. It was like I was invisible. I just walked in and it was like they didn't even realize that I didn't arrive 2 hours earlier. I mean, it was the funniest thing ever. And I didn't even bring it up. I was like, okay. And I was just perfectly fine. I made all my meetings. Everything happened. I was 2 hours late and nobody said a thing. And it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I've experienced that in my own life.
Logic doesn't come into play either, right? Like, it's not even worth trying to dissect why nobody cared. It just, that's the experience. If I could jump in and just share a quick experience, and this is kind of fun, attracting something complete, because a lot of times when we attract things, the way it comes is completely unexpected. And this goes actually back to when I lived in San Francisco. I had just moved there, and I moved there very quickly. It was a very quick shift in my life. And I did not do it on a lot of money. And as a matter of fact, I spent that first summer that I was living there, I was living off of some savings that I had, and I had gotten down to ground zero in my savings. And I was literally I was working I had an internship, but I wasn't making a lot of money, and I had a really bad toothache. And I did not know what my solution was for having this resolved, because I didn't have any money. I was new in this city, but I knew I was supposed to be there in San Francisco. I knew that I had manifested that quick shift in my life, and it looked like my next option was to close the door on San Francisco, to come back home, and I was like, I know that's not. I just knew that wasn't what was supposed to happen, and so I just kept this vibration, I guess we'll call it, this feeling that I am supposed to be here. The solution's going to show up. And I was sitting in the place where I was working as an intern, and literally after having a phone call with my father where I was kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck. I'm trying to figure out the solution. I didn't say stuck to him so much because I really didn't believe I was stuck, but I was trying to kind of walk a fine line between not having your parent be overly worried, but not, anyway. But
classic young people problems.
Inside,
I got you.
Yes, right. Yeah. A little bit of deflection there for the family. But what happened the moment I went inside, I sat down at my desk and one of my colleagues came up, or I'm sorry, my boss came up and was like, I have to go out of town tomorrow. And I need someone last minute to watch my dogs. Will you watch my dogs? And he goes, I'll pay you $200 and I can give you cash right now. And I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh. I knew in my mind, with this money, I can go to the dental clinic and get this fixed. And
yes.
So yeah, I did. Literally, it just showed up. There was no logic at all for that. I was
Absolutely.
the brand new guy in the office.
I've seen that happen over
yeah.
and over and over again.
Yeah.
I've literally been in an office and I've taught one of the people who I hired in to work for me about law of attraction and to redirect focus and that you're in control of something, and her computer broke and she literally said, you know what? I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to be able to fix my computer. Right. And just so happens the same day, someone heard about it through the grapevine and they were a veteran and they said, oh, I get all this extra stimulus stuff because I'm a veteran, but I always give it away as like my giving back. And I find someone who needs something. So I'm getting it tomorrow. So why don't I just give you the cash right now? Because I'm going to be reimbursed. And he just basically gave her money right there for a brand new iMac laptop. And it was it was that quick. It was the same day. And she was like, are you kidding me? And he said, no, I do this every month. And you're somebody who needs something. So there, it can just be you this month. So that's the whole point is we don't always know exactly what the solution looks like. It's about just releasing the how and the why and the where and all that stuff. And just knowing that we can attract that into our space, but also vibrating into a space where we're a worthy recipient of these things, right? We're not in need. We're not in lack. We're not ever coming from lack space because we also know we're going to be and are growing into these people who also contribute. We have value to give. This girl who attracted that into her life had value to produce from the computer. Right. So she knew that she would be adding value back into the world with this new computer. Yeah. That's the space that you want to be. You're never in lack. You're never in need. You have value to exchange. And so you are completely worthy to receive things that are of value to you as well, because you are a value producer. And that's why we always talk about consumer versus creator. Be in that creation space. Be in the creation space. And, I'll give another example too. I always talk about points of connection, right? So this is a lot of times why, and this kind of goes back to what the question was from Chris, just saying like it's hard when it's not working, right? So a lot of times when you meet people at a certain connection space, right? You don't realize that you have connected to them because like attracts like. So what if you meet somebody there's a term called trauma bonding. So, I had trauma in my life. Me too. So you start bonding over that, right? Well, what if you are somebody who actually is vibrating out of that space? You're not in lack or need or want from that space anymore. And you're getting to a space where you're feeling good and you're detaching from that story. You're becoming the author of your life and rewriting that. And you're moving forward and you're writing new chapters and you're excited and you're becoming powerful. You're becoming magnetic. That relationship can very easily shift and change because you had an entry point of connection with that person that was based on lower vibrational energy. So that's why we also have to understand that law of attraction works all the time. It's not just with positive stuff that we want. It's anything that we're placing our focus on and any entry point with anybody or any situation. That's why we have to allow ourselves space to change and to morph and to grow. And we have to be willing for things to look different. And we have to be willing to embrace and discard is the term I use all the time. And we just talked about recently in this last week's coaching with everybody, I used the example of a lightning bolt. Think about your desire being the ground and the cloud being where you are currently. Well, in order for me to get from the cloud to the ground, and I'm energy, right? I got to cut through the atmosphere. And if I'm trying to find my path of least resistance, what does that actually look like? Well, when you're lightning, when you're cutting through the atmosphere, the path of least resistance changes every, microsecond. So that's why the line is never straight. You have to be willing to embrace and discard and shift directions and pivot 1,000,000 times to get from the cloud to the ground. And it can happen so fast as a lightning strike, if you are willing to embrace and discard and pivot and shift as fast as lightning. And that's why certain people can manifest in the snap of a finger and other people cannot. Because they are not yet, like Bruce Lee says, like water. They don't conform to the things around them and move around objects and change directions. And you just have to become liquid with the way things look. If people are not in the vibrational space to aid in that manifestation in your life anymore, and they're not in the right space and they become a block, you have to move around it. You can't say the outcome has to look like this. This person has to be in my life. This is what it has to look like. I have to be here. Yeah, this is the car I have to drive. All those details have to evaporate. And the ultimate goals that transcend specific people, specific situations, events, circumstances, anything that we can see reflecting on our outside, that has to evaporate. And that's, like, for me, one of my lifetime goals, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is to create purpose, prosperity, and impact. Well, that has nothing to do with a particular person or a situation or a job opportunity. So I have dedicated myself to that as a lifetime manifestation, and that I will continue to seek and run everything that I do past that and say, is it creating purpose, prosperity, and impact? And if it's not for me. So easy to embrace the things that are that and discard the things that are not, because I actually have identified those things. And that is why I think that, bringing it back to what Chris is talking about, if you're trying to just manifest something that you perceive as a really big goal or a really big dream into your current space from your current level of understanding, it seems so far away. It seems so big. It seems so massive. And you are not in a vibrational space for yourself to actually be existing with that thing you're trying to manifest. So it seems so impossible. And so your perception is law of attraction doesn't work. When the reality is it absolutely works all the time. You're just attracting things that aren't that. Because you are also not vibrating in the space to be the person that will exist with that manifestation in the reality that you're trying to create. So those are the two things we're trying to do, is vibrate into the space, match the frequency of the reality that we're trying to create, and become the person who exists in that reality. So visualize those components, Chris, and anyone else that's listening. Who are you in that reality space? What is that reality space? What do you think about? What do you do? What are your habits? What kind of people are you around? What does it feel like? Those are the kind of things we need to be thinking about and exploring.
And you absolutely have to ignore the experiences that you've had up until that point about the thing. If you're trying to manifest, if you want to experience a loving, healthy relationship, but all you've had in the past are bad dates, boyfriends or girlfriends who lose interest or whatever, you have to change the story. You can't keep saying, this doesn't work for me. I can't have that. I'm not attractive, or whatever the story is. You can't keep saying that and expect to manifest the thing that you want. It's just not. You are literally defying the laws of physics in trying to do that. And once you understand that, once you have a couple of successes, like I still think about to this day, I've had so many other way bigger manifestations since that guy, paid me to watch his dogs at the perfectly right moment. I still think about today just how beautifully that showed up, and all I did was be where I was supposed to be, and in the belief that I was supposed to be there. That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
That's it. That is it. And we're going to continue this conversation next week, actually, because we're going to, all of these things are connected together. This is like a beautiful puzzle that you can kind of keep constructing, and it just becomes more and more beautiful and exciting as you go. But all the puzzle pieces are there on the table, and we can kind of help connect all these dots and put these puzzle pieces together to create a more easy, exciting, adventurous, high vibrational experience as you are actively creating your reality. So next week, we're going to talk about how this translates into basically tuning into your success through your brainwave state. So frequency. We've talked about energy, frequency, vibration. This is the frequency component of that. So we're going to talk about that next week on the show. But also, I'm going to challenge everybody this week to, really think about what we've been talking about over the past several episodes about your energy, about your vibration, about becoming expansive. So you attract what you are. What does that mean? Become magnetic, vibrate higher, grow in your own mass and your personal power. What does that mean? That means show up, take up space in your life. How many times have you heard these successful people say, I showed up and I took up space in that room. That space was for me. I belonged in that space. We're telling you, take up the space. That is where you become magnetic. That is where you've developed value and you're bringing it to the table. And that is what is magnetic about you. So think about that this week and how you're going to develop that value. And if these things are really, really hitting you and you're like, this is my path, this is what I've been missing, you've defined a gap and these things are filling that gap for you, this might be one of the components that is meant for you on your journey. And we absolutely would love to have you in our online community. Again, we talk about these things outside of the insular community that we have, the Manifestor's Guide Inner Circle, just because we're going to keep putting these things out in the world because it generates more good. This is the world we want to create. So if you just keep listening to the podcast, you're always going to find value here because we are purposefully giving you, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of just value all the time. But if you're really ready to make this a lifestyle change and you're ready to shift at lightning speed, hit us up in the Manifestor's Guide to Ease system and get into that online community. Because I'm telling you, the weekly coaching, we delve into these things a lot more. And we also provide unlimited coaching forever, and you get access to that inner circle community where you can actually have accountability buddies and partner up with people, and you can get all your questions answered, and you have mentors. It is the way to go if this is part of the gap in your life. So visit us at manifestorsguide.com if that interests you. And if this is just something that is, you already know these things and you're practicing, but this is something that's providing value for you each week as you listen to these episodes, please let us know. We just love providing this purpose-driven content to people every single week. I know Charlie and I have had so many discussions about how it just brings us such joy to do this. This is part of my purpose in life, and I will continue to do this until I die. Because this is legacy work that we're doing here, is leaving behind a legacy that matters by giving this kind of value out into the world. And I will encourage you to think about how you're going to do that in your life by expanding your magnetism and becoming more magnetic toward the things that you want and taking up that space. So that's your challenge for this week. Charlie, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's perfect. That is perfect.
Beautiful. Gorgeous. Well, thank you everybody for listening this week. We will see you guys next week when we talk about tuning into success through brainwave states. That's going to be a super interesting topic. We've talked about brainwave states quite a bit in our coaching recently, and it is beyond fascinating, and it is something that has really added value to my life, and I know it will add value to yours as well. So we will see you guys then. All right. Bye-bye.
See y'all next week. Bye.